So, first of all, excuse my voice, I'm still recovering from my throat infection from last week, but we gotta do a video, so let's do a video. Today I'm doing one of my favorite Italian recipes, one of the first things I ate when I was introduced to Italian food. It's called a spaghetti aglio olio. Now, there are different versions of this recipe that are available. I'm doing the most simple version of it, and it's a fairly easy recipe, fairly fast to get through as well. I'd say you require about half an hour to an hour to complete the whole recipe start to finish. Now, traditional aglio olio, literally translated, it means oil and garlic. The traditional one uses a little bit of chili as well for a little heat, but that's optional. I like it. I like heat, so I'm going to use the chili. Now, for that, we're going to use some ingredients. So, what I like to do is I like to add a protein in with my aglio olio. So, I use shrimp, which is Meridie, my wife's favorite. But you can use chicken or anything else. When using shrimp, I like to use raw shrimp. I never buy cooked shrimp. It doesn't make sense. That's almost flavorless. Besides that, we're going to use garlic, which is the aglio part of it, green chili or a pepper, whatever you want to call it. Now, I'm using a green chili, but traditionally I believe that you got to use a dry red chili. But it completely depends on what you want to use and your preference. Now, I'm basing this recipe off something that I ate first time back in my hometown of Goa, where it was an Italian restaurant that was opened by an Italian gentleman, and he used to do it with the green chili, and I like that flavor, so that's why I'm doing it with the green chili as well. So besides that, you need your spaghetti. So I'm making it for about 3 people, so I need about 500 grams of spaghetti roughly, a little less, a little more, and olive oil. And of course you need salt. So I'm going to start by marinating my shrimp. I'm going to start marinating it with a little bit of salt. So use your discretion. I'm using about a pound of shrimp, so I'm going to use about a teaspoon of salt just to season it. And I'm going to give that a little mix. Let it coated nicely. And this is just to let the shrimp absorb that salt, and it makes it taste a lot better. It makes a big difference, in fact. I'm just going to set that aside now. And then we're going to use garlic. So generally if you're using garlic, it's recommended that you use about 1 to 2 cloves per person. There are 3 of us today, but we all like garlic, so I'm going to use 4 cloves. So what you want to do is smash the garlic, peel it, and you got to chop it a little fine. Smashing it is easier to peel it, but you can just peel it the usual way, which takes a little longer, I feel. Also, when you smash it, it becomes easier to cut it and chop it up fine. The peels just come off. Another optional thing you can do is you can use parsley to season the oil as well, but we'll talk about that later. Now, this garlic is a little damaged, so I'm just going to take that part out and discard it. It doesn't mean you have to throw out the whole clove, you can still use that part of it. Now we're going to mince this fine. This is one of my favorite knives that I happened to buy when I was really drunk one night. And I tell my wife she's lucky, because when other people get drunk, they message their exes. When I get drunk, I go shopping for knives. Anyway, so we're just going to mince that as fine as we can. The idea is to mince it fine so that way it turns into almost a paste. When you're using it, it gets emulsified and becomes a kind of a sauce. Now, this recipe is usually made with dry pasta. You can use fresh pasta, but I prefer using dry. The traditional way is to use it dry as well. And mainly this was a poor man's pasta. So it was something that you ate when you didn't have enough money. Coming towards the end of the month, you don't have enough money to buy a good protein. So you just make spaghetti aglio olio. just the way you mince it. Now you can also smash the garlic if you want. You can use a garlic press. Personally, I'm not a fan of garlic presses, but it's completely up to you. If you're comfortable with them, use them. Whatever you find easier. And like I said, you need at least a clove of garlic per person. You can go less if you don't like garlic, but I mean, who doesn't like garlic, right? You want all the pieces of garlic almost the same size. That way it cooks at the same time and it's easier to use. That's roughly the same size. We're going to leave that aside. And then we're going to chop the chili. Now, if you find chilies hot, I'm using a finger hot here. These chilies are not really spicy and I find them really nice. I like slicing them almost vertically. As you can see, they come nice and fine. It looks nice when you're presenting as well. Good tip for chilies is that if you're buying usually you can't buy a small amount of chilies, right? So what I do is I buy it in bulk and then I freeze them. And they keep pretty well in the freezer. Now, another thing is that if you find the chili too hot, you can deseed them, but I'm Asian. I like spice, so I'm going to keep the seeds in. And that's the end of that. So that's the end of the prep. All ready to go. So here I've got about 3 liters of water. It's coming up to a boil. Now, they say in Italy your water for your pasta should be as salty as the sea. I prefer to measure it a different way. So what I do is I just use 1 teaspoon per liter of water, 1 teaspoon of salt per liter of water. So that's 3 teaspoons here. Use a little bit of heat teaspoon. So this, now you may think it's a lot of salt for just 3 people, but keep in mind that half of this water is just going to be discarded out. And what actually gets absorbed is less than 1%. So if you look at 3 teaspoons for 3000 ml of water, it comes to roughly about a 1% solution, and that's hardly anything. Out of that, maybe about 10% will get absorbed into your pasta, and that's it. So don't worry about the salt. If you have a problem with sodium, don't use the salt. There's no harm. The reason that you use salt is firstly to flavor the pasta, and secondly, when you add anything to water, it increases the boiling point, so it cooks at a little higher temperature. That's why we use salt, to kind of make it cook faster. So what you want to do is you want to wait for it to come to a rolling boil. You can see now it's just starting to steam. It's going to take another maybe 3 or 4 minutes to start actually bubbling. And once it comes to a rolling boil, that's when you put the pasta in. I just want to talk to you about the garlic for a bit, because well, garlic is supposed to have a lot of anti-cancerous properties, and the way you unlock those properties is by chopping the garlic and leaving them out for a while. So that helps to enhance the alliums inside the garlic and makes the cancer-fighting properties even more enhanced. Now, this is based on some research. It's not 100% verified, but it's on the latest research that's available. So whenever you're using garlic, just chop it beforehand, keep it out for about half an hour, and then use it in your dish. The water still will come up to a boil, so let's just wait for that before we start. Okay, now you see this is what's called a rolling boil. So the water is now ready for the pasta to go in. So what I like to do is just grab your pasta in one swift motion and use 2 hands, twist them a bit, drop. Just leave your pasta like that, it'll go into the water as it cooks. Now we move to the next part of the thing while that cooks. So the packet said it needs about 7 minutes. So I'm going to assume it's going to need 6 to 7. So we start the other part of the dish, which is the olio part. So let's just put this on a medium to low heat. So we don't want it to be too strong. Okay, we're going to use a nice glug of olive oil. And we're going to start with some parsley stalks in there. just to flavor the oil a bit. Now we're going to remove the parsley stalks before we actually start cooking. But this is just to flavor the oil a bit and give it a little more flavor and taste, a little different taste. This is not by any means compulsory, but it does enhance the flavor a bit. And we're just going to wait a bit while that heats up. Now, another thing that people usually talk about when cooking this pasta is that we should not allow the garlic to burn. Now, traditionally that's important. You don't want the garlic to burn. But sometimes you like that little bit of crispy garlic. It totally depends on you. I know a lot of people are going to be really upset with me for doing that, but sometimes I like that little bit of crispiness in the garlic. I let it burn a little bit, but not too much. If you let it burn too much, it'll give you a horrible taste. We're just going to leave that as this. Increase the heat a bit. So the way you know it's nice and hot is when you start seeing bubbles, which have not yet happened here. Another thing that most chefs don't like traditional chefs, they don't like the use of tweezers. I, on the other hand, find them very useful, especially for plating and everything else. They're like mini tongs, in my opinion, and much more delicate, so you can handle smaller quantities. So I just say use what you feel like. So we're just going to wait for the parsley to come up to temperature. So here we're just infusing the oil with parsley flavor again, like I said before. You know, the oil is a little hot when it starts flowing easily, so this is the kind of heat that you want. You can see a few bubbles starting to form. That's always good news. Now you don't want to deep fry this. You don't want it to be really hot. You just want it to infuse a bit. So once you see a few bubbles here and there, you can see here a few bubbles bursting around the edges of the parsley. You're good to go. You can actually pull these out now. Now, another way of doing this is you can just let it be in there or chop it finer, but that would increase the flavor of the pasta. It all depends on how much you want. So now we're going to add the garlic and the chili in. Another thing to keep in mind when boiling pasta is to use a large enough pot. And the reason for that is basically you have to let the pasta dance a bit. So that enables it to cook evenly and doesn't get stuck to the bottom. Well, just in case, let's just give it a little stir, make sure it's not sticking. You can see it's still not soft as you want it, so we'll use a while more. Let's keep that there. Okay. So the garlic, you can see, is starting to cook. Now, with garlic and any other allium, if you're using garlic or onions or ginger, the easiest way to tell if it's close to getting done is by the smell. So you know, you have a raw garlic smell and then you have a cooked garlic smell. So when the smell goes from raw to cooked, that's when you know it's ready. So in this case, it needs a little more time. Alright, you can see here that it's starting to brown. So before it browns too much, we're going to put the prawns in there, or shrimp. North America they say shrimp, in Britain and the rest of the world we say prawns, but you know, it's the same thing. So you can see I'm just going to toss it a bit to make sure they're evenly cooked. Now the key with prawns is you got to make, or the shrimp, you got to make sure they're not overcooked, because the more you cook them, they'll get rubbery. You just want to give them a light sear. Think, and we've already seasoned these prawns, remember, so you don't have to really add salt here.
garlic, your chili or pepper, and your shrimp all cooking together. And you'll notice that we had a little bit of liquid in the prawn thing, like in the shrimp marinade, and we use that liquid. The reason we use that is that that's where all the flavor is. And well, whenever using shrimp or any seafood, make sure you keep flavor. So I'm gonna guess the pasta is almost done. I'm gonna test it by just eating one. Don't throw it on the wall, that's a waste of pasta. Yep, it's al dente. So al dente means it's a little bit of bite. And what's gonna happen is you're gonna put the pasta into the pan and it's gonna finish cooking there. So we add the pasta in. And the most important thing with Italian cooking that no one really tells you about unless you cooked in Italy. Well, actually, now that there are so many videos, you probably heard it before. But you got to keep some pasta water for the final cook. And for this much of pasta, you probably need about a cup of pasta water. So that's just going to help it emulsify and make sure there's a little bit of a sauce created. So here I have my big spoon, which is roughly a cup measure. I'm going to add that in there. And then stir that up. Now, the ideal way is to toss it, but when I toss stuff, it usually creates a mess, so I prefer just stirring it like this. Now, when it comes to the restaurant setting and you're basically trying to serve a million people at the same time, tossing works just fine. In this case, just keep stirring. You want to get this, so you can see here, there's a little bit of sauce forming. And you can't see the olive oil separating from the sauce. So that means it's kind of emulsified. And that's what you want to go with. Oh. That's it. That's your pasta. All you do is serve and eat.
Okay, so to plate it, we're just gonna add some pasta to a small little needle. This is just to make it look a little fancy. Twist it around with the tweezers. Let's just get it on the plate there. It looks a little bit like a cone. And we're gonna top it off with some parsley, which I was hiding in my hand. And I'm gonna add a little bit of Aleppo chili flakes just to give it a little color and a little more heat than we need. Add some shrimp there. What is it, about 4 pieces? 4 shrimp? I think 4 should be good. That one. Shrimp. And let's top it off with a little bit of Parmigiano. I don't use the Parmesan that you get, like the bottled Parmesan. Get a nice block like this. If you find Parmigiano Reggiano too expensive, use Grana Padano or anything that you find cheaper. Just don't use the bottled Parmesan. As far as I know, that's like fake stuff. So you look for the original Italian Parmigiano Reggiano. And there you have it. Spaghetti Aglio Olio with shrimp.